forgive me, Mother Goddess. I will listen to you from here on out as the sole authority. I've also continued to be under attack by certain sections of so-called, I don't understand the feminism stuff, and I don't intend on understanding it because I don't give a fuck about it, right? But apparently there is a faction of feminists, and they call themselves, this is what I've been told, they have called themselves the gender abolitionist. The gender abolitionist. So according to these feminists, gender should be completely abolished. And it's necessary for, I guess, all socially prescribed gender roles to come to be abolished by decree or something, where no one will have any socially prescribed gender role any longer. Everyone will be a free floating subject who can just make choices based on their lived experience instead of any socially or culturally prescribed gender norm. But I think these people are mentally retarded. And the reason I think that is just as on a medical sense, I think they are. Because I don't think they understand how the so-called socially prescribed gender norms come into being. I think they think gender norms come into being through a conspiracy of some kind where someone has drafted up a list of rules and ways to control people. It's by the way, this so-called feminism thing, I don't understand anything about it. I just understand that people on Twitter constantly bitching at me and crying or whatever. I think it's totally related to the patriotism thing. Why? Also, patriotism, patriarchy, it's related, right? The reason it's related is because both of them have a fundamental confusion that just like how the anti-patriots think that loyalty to one's country necessarily implies the oppression or antagonism toward other countries, they think that patriarchal order, not in the feminist sense, but in the literary sense of of the tradition of passing authority down through generations, Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, that's patriarchy, right? That's patriarchal tradition. It's this idea that patriarchy is about women when it's about the determinate nature of order in general. Order as such has a history. Order is not about oppressing people specifically. Order is about its own inner development. They don't recognize the inner development of the so-called patriarchal order as following as its own immanent internal logic, which, if you remove that, it's not like you have free liberal people running around making choices, doing whatever they want. You have nothing. You have no humanity. You have no civilization. You have nothing. This order is the way in which we remember our determinate form of humanity. It's how we remember how to be human beings. Without it, there's no prohibition of incest. Without it, there's no way to make sense of the world. There's no meaning in the world. There's confusion. There's people getting caught up in all sorts of wacky drives, fucking animals and fucking their grandma and doing all this crazy shit. They think it's about, they have this liberal idea, just like how these people say, if we abolish countries, then we're all just going to be free. No, we're not. If we abolish countries, we're just going to be eliminating one of the ways in which human beings establish a connection to themselves. Just going to eliminate one of the ways we keep track of our own development as human beings and relate to that development and make sense of it and recall it and identify with it. We're just going to be confused, right? It's like removing a country from a human being. It's like removing the shell from a turtle. It's part of what we are. It's not specifically about oppressing others. It's about us. Before we can talk about others, we have to recognize we have a determinate form. There's no universal humanity that's just out there, that we're not part of some universal fucking community that we all fucking belong to in some kind of way. We don't belong to some universal fucking community. Our universality, our universal humanity only takes the particular and determinate form of a given civilization, country, or state. It doesn't just exist there as a given. That has to be developed in a particular way. This is such a way of thinking that is so fucking hard to impart to people. You don't just exist as a universal human subject. The way in which you relate to universal humanity takes a determinate form. It's like, you don't understand, even if you want to be a universalist, let's say Americans burn the flag. We're going to burn and spit on the flag and whatever, tear it apart. And then we're going to decide, you know what, we're going to create our own universal community. So we create our own universal community. And then we expand our whatever, and we create this universal order. And then we realize, hey, the universal war is at war with Mexico. The universal order is at war with Canada. The universal order is at war with Russia. The universal order is at war with everybody. And then soon enough, you're going to realize there's something different about you, regardless of whether you acknowledge it or not, that others are defining for you anyway. And then you realize, holy shit, our universal order that we just created is still America. Do you think America is the flag? Do you think America is the Constitution? Do you think... No, there's something about America that is the limit of our ability to express our universal humanity. And by the way, the same thing is true with patriarchy. So-called patriarchy. It's the same fucking thing. It's the exact same thing. You can get rid of every single patriarchal gender norm. Get rid of all of them. Get rid of everything. There is still something. There's still something about our humanity that is somehow gendered, that is somehow sexed. And that sexuation that happens, the division into two genders, that sexuation takes a determinate form, which just so happens to be what? The male and female gender. The sexuation being signified by the male gender and the female gender being defined by the difference within the form of that sexuation. Read Lacan's formula, Zizek's description of Lacan's formulas of sexuation if you want to understand this. Do people even know, for example, man and woman, it's all immanent. It's not gender theory, it's psychoanalysis. I'm against gender theory, I'm against Judith Butler, and I believe in, I don't believe in social construction view of gender whatsoever. But I believe in this thesis of the Ljubljana School of Psychoanalysis that more or less sex is ontology, or ontology is sexed. Sexuation is being, it's ontology. Sexual difference is inscribed somehow at the heart of being itself. Being itself is sexed. That's my view. And then I started thinking also about communism and the woman's question. Because I don't want us to be a community of incels, right? And everyone seems to react to us bizarrely in that fucking kind of way where they're like, we're at war with the soy boys, right? And everybody seems to be mislabeling us and responding to us. Oh, they're a bunch of incels. They're just making assumptions. You're making assumptions about who we fucking are. Yeah, we're not a very female-heavy community. That's not because we hate women. That's not because we shun women. It's just because it's because men will tend to stick with men and women will tend to stick with women as a rule generally. So why are you making all these fucking assumptions that we are against women or whatever, right? But what I'm trying to say with regard to that is I don't think these people speak for all women. I don't think they speak for women. And I think why... Oh, this is what I was going to say. So I made a tweet that pissed them off. And this is the last thing I'm going to say about this shit, because I don't like talking about this feminist shit. I really don't give a fuck, right? But I made a tweet. I was like, so there's this cuck, little bitch, soy cuck pussy, who was like, in for rent, people give me patriarchal vibes. And then Ezra responded with a picture of Stalin and Mao. And they were like, is this patriarchal vibes? And then he was like, but Mao said women hold up half the sky. And then Ezra was like, yeah, but patriarch doesn't mean you hate women. And then I was like, yeah, actually, I know a thing about history. Historically, the role of patriarchs that rise to power has been to uplift women's status. Every patriarch in history somehow uplifted the status of women compared to before. Like, for example, in Arabia, before the Prophet, you had cucks, literal cucks. Look it up. There was Arabian cuck normalization. Samira is the one who told me about that. And you had also this kind of like, you know, this, it was really bad for women in pre-Islamic Arabia. And the patriarch, the prophet comes, and suddenly it gets better for women. It's like every time there's like these revolutions in history where a patriarch comes to power, it seems like things get a little better for women, you know? So I gave Stalin an example of that, because communist states are probably the best example of this. And then I got quote tweeted by the feminists, and they were like, you're just trying to rebrand patriarchy to trick us feminists into trusting you. And the first thing I wanted to say is, I don't give a fuck about you. I don't know who the fuck you were or where you came from. I wasn't addressing you. I didn't tag you. Wasn't talking to you. I was talking to my colleague Ezra. And who the fuck are you? I don't give a fuck about you or the feminist community. I have nothing to do with you guys, right? But it got me thinking that it got me thinking about how to think about the women's question in communist states, because it did open up this question where it's like, I wonder what people think about that. Do people kind of think that women's rights improved under communism because men were being compassionate? And then you could say, no, it was because there was a woman's movement within the communist states. True, but how is there a woman's movement? How is that tolerated or allowed? Somewhere along the line that you do have men like giving ground to this. So did they do that out of empathy? And did they do that out of the compassion of their hearts? Or is there a deeper reason? I'm saying there's a deeper reason. I'm not saying they did this because they're benevolent and they're like, oh, we like women. Women should have rights. I love my women. No, they're not fucking doing it. That's not the reason for the women's question being a thing. And if the only evidence you need is like, well, Haz, you're underplaying the role the women's movement played. No, I'm not, because Engels and Marx understood there was a woman's question, and no women were pressuring them into that. They just were able to understand it on their own. So what I propose to say with regard to that is, it's not that communist men are empathetic and charitable to women. We are men. We are men. We're not charitable to anyone. We have our own interests. We're not, out here being the guardians or saviors of women. But there seems to be a unique relationship between women and sociality in general. And to me, any movement which somehow does not address in a unique way the woman's question cannot actually acquire the status of true, I can't use the terms you don't understand, true power of this civilization and society. In other words, if you have a group of incels, or if you have a group of people who hate, who don't want, and who don't address this women stuff, right? Basically, we can get away with it for a little bit, not addressing the woman stuff. Now, I'm not saying with the incel shit, that's another story, but we can get away with not addressing, but there comes a point where if you don't, you will not be worthy of the highest extent of sociality. When I say sociality, I just mean the thing that turns our interests from being private and individual interests to being universal interest. So women has a unique significance with regard to universal social interests. To me, men, it's very easy for us to just be in our private interests, right? But when we are addressing our universal community, whether it's our country, our civilization, etc., 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 we somehow have to reckon with a level of sociality that the female gender somehow has a significant, privileged relationship to. And I can explain why in psychoanalytic terms, but it's not important. It's probably irrelevant. So that's also why, for example, inceldom also corresponds to a kind of childlike state of complete freedom to just, I wouldn't call it freedom, but just like the ability to kind of not be kept in check in terms of cringe. You know what I mean by that? So it's like you basically don't get castrated in the Freudian sense. You just have this unlimited enjoyment, whatever you want, and then somehow the forcing of the women's question is another extension of the castration that corresponds to a level of deepened socialization. So to me, it's about socialization. It's about sociality, addressing the sociality. And that's why the communist movements were big on the women's question, or were very progressive, I don't like that word, on women's rights. It wasn't because they had compassion for women. It was an inevitable byproduct of addressing the common sociality of the time to such a total extent, right? When I say total, I mean like a community of men is a limited sociality. It's a limited. It could never be worthy of a patria, of a country, right? In order for it to be a country, that's a motherland. So for it to be a country, the prior status of women cannot remain the same. The prior status of women can't remain the same because that is a prior form of sociality. But communism is a new form of sociality, or I should say a deepened and more universal form of sociality that becomes named somehow, or becomes addressed and becomes an object of politics, and so on and so on. It's just this increased level of socialization. And if I'm not making sense to you, for example, the electrification of the country, the increase of the ability for people to communicate who were isolated previously, so on and so on and so on. So there's some kind of gender dynamic when it comes to that. There's something there.
Based.
You call Cyberson an incel, but Cyber is called that because he hates Gloria Steinem, CIA feminism. It's an idpal weapon to split up workers.
No, it's not. I'll tell you why it's not. Liberal feminism does not split workers because workers don't give a fuck about liberal feminism. What liberal feminism does is it weakens the culture of class-conscious, communist, whatever, fighters. It weakens the consciousness of the advanced intelligentsia or whatever. It weakens the vanguard. It doesn't weaken the workers. The workers don't give a fuck about feminism. I promise you. As a matter of fact, my problem with people who make feminism into a social issue, like feminism is ruining our country, I disagree. I disagree because I recognize the complete weakness and impotence of feminism. Why? Because you claim we're so feminist about women's equality and so on and so on. Look at the rates of domestic violence in the USA. Look at the extent to which women are taken advantage of at the workplace, at local levels. Look at the extent to which women are preyed on still. Look at the extent to which women face harassment going out in public etc., etc., etc. Only in the most safe space enclaves of universities and so on do you have this extreme politically correct control. But for the majority of American women, you're not looking at some kind of rule of feminism. None. So I understand feminism has a role in some institutions, big tech, academia. Some people say the courts, but I don't buy that because I'm a guy who happens to believe that, and this is going to be a bad thing, but according to Islam, for example, custody of the child should go to the woman as a rule, depending on how old the child is. But maybe I'll be a little reactionary and say, if she remarries to another man, then what right does that man have to the children, right? Sorry, if we live in a patriarchal society, then the children should go with their mother if she's unmarried. If she marries another man, then the original father should have the kids. I don't care if you call me sexist. That's my common sense. But maybe I'm wrong. It's just my personal view, right? But I don't know why I have to tell you everything in my head. But anyway, yeah, I agree, Jennifer. As a rule, I agree. But all things considered equal, it's probably better to go with the woman. Just because, a mother has a unique connection to her children. But anyway, what if both original parents remarry? Why would another woman have rights to the kids? Because the father's the head of the household in a patriarchy. And if we still live in a patriarchy, another man should not be the head of the household of the child. But what I was trying to say is, yeah, so we still live in a society that's not feminist. So the only role feminists actually have, the liberal feminists, whatever you want to talk about, is fucking up the ability for, it's basically turning communist men into simps who are like, how could you? Because look, it's like they're trying to make it seem like the choice is between being because look, dude, I get it. Because I'm going to give you a classic example of this. So let's say there's like some DSA club that forms, and a guy walks in who's not really aware of the woman thing that well, like the woman's issues, or just understanding women in general, which most men don't. Actually, I'll say all men don't understand women. I don't understand, no one understands them, right? We don't understand each other, that's okay. So they go into this DSA club, and non-binary vegan cyclist, you're a dumbass. It's not fucking idealist. Idealism is saying that feminism has a material cause on anything except other ideological cultures. Feminism doesn't fucking affect the real world. Anyway, you go to this DSA club, and the dude doesn't understand women because he's a man. Men and women don't understand each other. But here's the problem with America, is that we don't have a culture of honor. So Americans think that men and women are the same and that we're all the same thing, right? So a dude goes into this club and he's not sensitive to women. When I say sensitive, I mean like he's not aware of how women are different, and that the things he says to his guy friends, they're going to take it a different way because men and women are just different, right? So he goes to this club and he starts overreaching, and he starts stepping on the women's shoes, basically. He starts overreaching into their shit, and then they get mad, and then he gets the realization that, holy shit, I was overstepping. I actually didn't understand what I was doing, and that's kind of humiliating, right? So then he can turn that into one of two instincts. He can become resentful and be like, this is all feminism's fault. I hate feminism. And then he becomes a super anti-feminist because he's resentful about the fact that he just got humiliated over the fact that he thought he knew more than he did about the female brain, I guess. Or he can basically become a simp who's like, oh, forgive me, Mother Goddess. I will listen to you from here on out as the sole authority and the glue of the social. Yes, Goddess. I will become a cuck. And then basically the dude becomes a simp and becomes totally weak and becomes incapable of leading anything, doesn't actually become a man and tap into their manliness as a source of communist power, so they basically become like a little bitch cuck, and that's 99% of leftists. Or they can go the other path and become super resentful anti-feminist dude, who also in a way becomes like a weak cuck, because all they do is bitch all the time and whine and complain about feminists. So if you want to know Sean Sanchez, that's why that's why people in the Discord were calling that guy an incel, because if you keep bitching about feminism, you're just whining and bitching, right? That's all you're fucking doing. So we happen to get smeared by mentally retarded people as the anti-feminist type of dudes, where they think we're resentful. We're not fucking resentful. We just don't take you that seriously because you're childish and not serious people. For all the woke people on Twitter. But I can't tell which one's worse, being a simp or being the like resentful incel kind of person. And I think how about if you were so weak that you became a simp, you need to be exiled. You have to go change your name, go get facial surgery, and get a new ID, and then you can come back if you learn from your mistakes. Otherwise, I don't want those people anywhere near infrared, and I also don't want the fucking incels either. So, what's the solution? I think the solution is we need more patriarchy. The solution to this problem is patriarchy, and if all of these so-called feminists want to get mad that I say that, I don't give a fuck, because y'all are the gender abolitionists. Y'all are mentally retarded, and I don't care anything about what you say. Anyway, I'm learning new things, right? I'm learning there's the gender abolitionist. Well, I don't give a fuck what you guys say, because, you know, at the end of the day, there's something wrong with your head. You have a mental illness, and, you know, you're never going to, like, have any serious impact on the real world. You're never going to have anything to do with the real world. You're going to come and try to wreck our shit and shit our shit up. We're just going to kick you out just like everyone else, right? So we don't really care what you do. Anyway, you have to be more charitable to incels. They have no choice in the matter. That's not true. That is not true at all. And by the way, being an incel doesn't mean you can't get pussy. It means you're bitter about it. And there's a big difference. And that not only are you bitter about it, but you express that bitterness in some kind of way publicly. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that, by the way, there's no such thing as someone who can't get pussy. That's just not true. But what I'm trying to say, can I show a knife on stream? Because I have a really big stiletto that I'm playing with right now. And am I allowed to show it on YouTube?
Stalin worked for Tsar's secret police.
No, he didn't. What I'm trying to say is you need more patriarchy, because according to... Look, I understand the dark arts. I understand how gender works and shit. I understand the laws of psychoanalysis. Don't question me. Just listen to me and obey me. And if anyone asks... I saw a really based thing on Twitter and I liked it. So there was this dude on Twitter arguing with one of these feminists. And she was like, what's your source, huh? And then he just goes, the Khan. So fucking based. That was the most based thing I ever saw in my life. She goes, what's your source? And he just said, the Khan. Period. And he put a period. He actually put a period. All right? So that's the most base thing I ever heard. And that's how I want you guys to start thinking. Anyone asks you for a source, a Khan. That's what you got to do, okay? I forgot who said that. Oh, yeah, Backtrack Podcast said that. Someone give him hero in the Discord just for saying that. But anyway, what I was trying to say is that about this patriarchy stuff, the way you solve the problem is patriarchy, because patriarchy is what allows us to be cognizant of our differences. Patriarchy instantiates the difference between men and women. And by the way, feminists are wrong. Patriarchy doesn't prescribe limitations on women. All patriarchy does is establish a difference. And that difference isn't based on how women are positively defined. It's based on negativity and lack. This is basically what Lacan teaches you. The difference between men and women is not based on positive characteristics that are prescribed beforehand. So it's like, for example, women are different because they clean in the kitchen and they make sandwiches and shit. No, that's not what patriarchy says. Patriarchy is the specific way of instantiating the fact that women simply stand for the difference as such. Man is the genus, man is man, the human man, right? Women stands for the difference, sexual difference inscribed in the genus of man itself. Now, what that means positively, women are totally free to develop what that is and deal with that on their own. Men don't define that in any explicit way. They try to say some shit like, oh, well, because they're religious. By the way, most of this is why I'm skeptical. A lot of this shit is basically like, when they say patriarchy, they're talking about Abrahamic religions, right? They're saying like, oh, but these texts prescribe rules for women. Yeah, they prescribe rules for men too, you know? So, what are you saying? And by the way, it's not so much that they prescribe the rules for women as much as they discern the laws already in place of how both of these genders are developing across history and what makes sense. There's a deeper hermeneutic to it than just control and restriction. That's a liberal view. They think, oh, patriarchy just restricts women's choices. Why do you think those choices always exist? Why do you think everybody's a free liberal subject who's capable of just making whatever choices they want arbitrarily across history? The range of choice that we make obeys certain laws. It obeys a certain logic. It obeys a certain... It itself is imminently limited, right? And recognizing those laws is not the same as forcing people into categories and forcing people and restricting them. It means, for example, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? Which is the quintessential question of the hysteric. What does it mean to be a woman? Well, that is not a question of prescribed knowledge. That is something that manifests itself in reality. And I reject categorically the idea that this, because it takes a determinate form, necessarily means it's a form of restriction of free choice. Just because, for example, women want to wear dresses and have long hair, that doesn't mean they are being forced. Sometimes that's their way of expressing their being. That's their way of doing that. And by the way, what man knows anything about women's fashion? I don't. You think we have a plan and we say, oh, women must have this fashion? We don't fucking know anything about women's fashion. They do all of that by themselves. They do all of that. We don't do any of that. Lots of men know about women's fashion. They are commonly designers. Maybe, where are they? Because every time I'm with every woman I've waited on downstairs takes 2 hours to fucking get ready. So, I don't know, maybe they need to, maybe they need to have a more secure line of communication with those people. Because, like, oh, should I wear this? Should I wear this? I don't believe matriarchy is real. There's never been matriarchy. There has been weak patriarchy, which is bad for women. But patriarchy is the solution to the gender question. That's how you prevent simps, and it's also how you prevent incels, is with real patriarchy. Patriarchy. And by the way, we're not doing that out of compassion. We're doing that to build a fucking communist party that is operational and works. Because incels and simps are a problem for the party. It's a very pragmatic consideration. We're not doing this because we want to be nice to women. Look, it's a dog-eat-dog world out here. How am I going to be compassionate for women when, what, am I going to be compassionate for everybody? I'm going to be compassionate for some random guy? I don't know you, right? But it's a pragmatic consideration that has to be addressed for that reason. There should be no room for compassion in the Communist Party, actually. You guys remember that CPUSA propaganda where they were like, I'll help you up, and it was like some girl helping a dude up? Yeah. shut the fuck up, bitch. There's no room for compassion in a communist party. I don't want sociopathic, sadistic people who get off on hurting others, but I also don't want compassionate people. I want ruthless fighters who are fighting for power. I don't want compassionate people and empathetic people, because that's called weakness. It's a dog-eat-dog fucking world, and we're all adults. So the bare minimum is you should look out for yourself, take care of yourself as an adult, and get this show on the road. I'm not here to be emotionally... we need to purge the Communist Party of emotionality. Let's all be emotional with each other. Shut the fuck up, bitch. We got a fucking country to win. We're gonna be emotional when we have a country to win. We got a working class to win. We're gonna be emotional. This is a brutal, cold, dog-eat-dog, ruthless fucking world. I don't want compassionate people. I don't want emotional people. I want fighters, cold-hearted, ruthless motherfuckers. That's what we need. This type of fucking shit. But you keep making these compassionate societies. You're just isolated from the world. You know how brutal it is out there? You know how brutal it is out there? You know how ruthless it is out there? You know how ruthless it is? Out there is where we're going. Out there is where we're going. We're going out there. That's where we're going. Out there. We're not going here to be comfy and cozy with each other. We're going out there, down to the countryside. Out there. They're not here. They're not here. New infrared slogan. New fatwa. New fatwa. New infrared slogan. Everybody repeat after me. They're not here. 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 Imprint it in your mind. Imprint it in your mind. That's our slogan. They're not here. Make the posters. Make the propaganda. They're not here. They're not here. They're not here. They're not here. You memorize this, you understand this, you will become a fighter. You will become a partisan. You will become a real communist, a fighter, a partisan. You understand? Focus on the ball, keep your eye on the money. That's how you'll become if you listen to these words, these wise words. Anyway, we communists have our own reasons for wanting to address a woman's question separate from the feminists. Feminists don't represent all women. Y'all don't monopolize shit. We are specifically interested in preventing mistakes that men make that hurt our movement. Incels cuck us because incels are whining, bitter, and resentful. You want to know basically what it is, guys? You think my problem with incels is that they have a problem with women? That's not the main problem I have. Actually, I don't care if you have a problem with women. I don't give a fuck. Go have a problem with them. I don't give a shit. Have a problem with anyone you want. I don't give a fuck. I have a problem with them because they're so short-sighted, they would never be able to see the bigger picture and be able to recognize how to relate to the essence of the era. Their bitterness and bitchy whining about women prevents them from being able to understand the true universal sociality at the cusp of the horizon. They're not able to fucking understand the vibe, the aesthetic of the era. They're not able to understand the universality of the object of the community. They're not able to relate to something bigger than themselves. They're stuck in their own fucking narcissism. They're stuck in their own fucking limited self-image that was humiliated, and they're not able to see the bigger picture. They're Philistines, like what Lenin said. They can't see the greater and deeper beauty of the historical era at hand. That's my problem with incels. Yeah, they can't even relate to other men. That's the point. They're not even able to relate to the men of the working class because they don't have the sense. They don't have the vibe. They don't have the move. They're too fucking limited. There's something about being There's something about having a healthy relationship to the female sex that allows you to be better at relating to masses. Don't believe me? Don't believe me? I know I've been doing this shit for 10 fucking years. I've been a student for 10 fucking years of history. And this is what I took away from history. This is what I took away from psychoanalysis. This is what I took away from research. And this is what I took away from common sense. And when I say healthy relationship to women, I basically just mean you don't have any pathologies of obsessiveness, of bitterness, of resentfulness, none of that. You are focusing on the bigger picture. That is what I have learned from history. Today, this stream is where I solve the woman's question. I'm solving it. I'm solving it as far as we're concerned. As far as I'm concerned and as we're concerned. I just solved it right now. Would Fidel tolerate incels? Hell no. Hell no, he wouldn't. He would send them to the boot camp. He would send them to the camps. Those camps. He would teach them to, what a real problem is. You understand? So that's the thing. It's a fine line between don't be a simp, don't be an incel. Don't base your attitude on women based on compassion. Base it on the bigger picture. Just leave room. Give them space. Give them space. Give them space. So the reason feminism is so popular is because you're stepping on their toes too much. Just give them space. Give them space. Let them do their own thing. Let them sort themselves out. And be at peace with that. By the way, this is another reason. Another reason the incels are a problem is because if you can't give women their space, you can't give me your space. Every incel in our community, all these obsessive people, they've always had the same obsessive pathology toward me that they have toward women. Because I'm a streamer and I'm an image, woo! So women represent the image to men too, right? Because it's like the fantasy or whatever.
As Felix Dzerzhinsky said, the best communist has a cold mind and a passionate
Thank you so much
heart.
for the 20. Absolutely. That's literally exactly it. So those same incel people, the same obsessive pathology they have toward women, they throw that on me. Now, with that being said, I already went on that rant. With that being said, the gender abolitionist feminists, the so-called feminists, I don't know who these people are. I don't know who they are. The people attacking me who are showing their pathology. The ones that bring up problems out of thin air for no reason. I'm talking about my community. I'm laying the limits within this community. Okay? When y'all come and make a mountain out of the molehill, you start making assumptions, you start being a wrecker in the name of your feminism. We don't give a fuck. You're a fucking wrecker. We don't tolerate that. Just like there's an incel pathology, there's a femcel pathology. There's some kind of weird femcel pathology where women, there's some who are resentful and bitter to men because of their unhappy romantic life or something like that. And they have this satanic impulse to force, they have a pathological relation to men, they force it, right? And usually I don't care. But when they come and start wrecking shit, it becomes a fucking problem. Let me give you an example of this wreckage that they do. Let's say you're in a meeting, right? And this is an extreme example, but it's going to give you an idea. Some dude comes to the meeting with a beard. And she raises the problem. That beard makes me uncomfortable. That represents patriarchy. And they start making it into a problem. Like, for example, no, I'm just wearing a beard. Why are you wearing a beard? Aren't you specifically distinguishing your male self from females? Beards have historically been used to oppress women because bearded patriarchs have worn them and they have restricted women's ability. And like they'll just go on these paranoid. It's fundamentally a pathological paranoia where they bring problems from nothing. They make problems out of nothing. It's completely, they just jump the gun and assume shit. That's a problem. I want some feminists to do self-criticism about that thing they do where they make assumptions. Like I'll be sitting here doing nothing, breathing. Hans, why are you thinking misogynist thoughts right now? Hans, why? I'm not doing anything. There's literally nothing in my head right now. There's nothing. There's nothing in my head right now. I'm not thinking anything. I'm just sitting and breathing, doing nothing at all. I just feel like, just like how men don't understand how women are different, they have a problem with the difference part, and like they're obsessed, like, how could there be something different from me? How could there be something? Men have that problem. But women also have the problem, a lot of the times, where they cannot understand that sometimes it ain't that deep and there's nothing there. They have a problem with understanding not the concept of nothingness. For some reason, a lot of women always assume something is there. They always assume there's a presence when there's not, right? We men all understand absence. When we're just sitting and chilling, unless you're like low T or something, and that happens sometimes. Like, have you ever been with a dude, you're just like chilling, he's like, are you mad at me? Yeah, you're low T. But when you're with your boys and you're chilling, y'all are just not doing nothing. Yeah, whatever. You're not conniving in your head. You're not plotting nothing. Y'all are just chilling. Nothing is going on. That nothingness, what I'm saying sounds stupid and petty and meaningless. No, it's so important because it has so much implications for being able to organize and being able to do anything. That paranoia where you paranoidally assume presence when there isn't any wrecks shit. It's not as much of a problem as the incel thing, but it's still a wrecker type of shit that causes problems. You get what I'm saying? I do speak for all men. I am the patriarch of gender relations. Everyone, listen, advice, just blindly accept everything I say. Your life will be so much better. If you just blindly accept everything I say, and people ask, what's your source, and say the Khan, life will be so much better. So much better. So much confusion will be reduced in your life. So much issues will be gone that were there before. You know, just trust me. I know what I'm talking about. Just trust me. Okay? Anyway, now I think that's it. I think that's all I want to say on the feminist issue.